On today's episode, we ask the question, do graphics matter? Welcome to the SaveState, a channel about all the things you love in nerd culture. I'm your host, Landon Barton, and joined with me is Seth Duncan and Derek Owen. And we've got a new set. I am very excited about this, and I gotta point it out, and I'm just happy.
It's legit.
Show some excitement with me. So how you guys doing today?
Doing well.
All right.
Good. How you doing? Good. All right, moving on.
Just wanted to show some personality. What I wanted to talk to you guys about today is over the past week, Ubisoft, the guys who make Assassin's Creed and the new game that's coming out, Assassin's Creed Unity, have been in a little bit of a debate where they announced that their new game, both on Xbox One and on the PlayStation 4, are going to be capped at 900p, running at 30 frames a second. And that kind of upset a lot of people, especially because the most recent Assassin's Creed before that launched on both Xbox One and PlayStation 4 at 900p, and a week or 2 weeks later there was a patch for the PlayStation 4 that bumped it up to 1080p, and people are upset because they think that the official quote, let me read this, was from Vincent Pontbriand, who's the, I hope I said that right, he's the senior producer at Ubisoft on Assassin's Creed Unity, and he said, "We decided to lock them in at the same specs to avoid all the debates and stuff." So, a statement like that makes it seem like they've reduced the quality of one to make it compatible or comparable to the quality of the Xbox One. And we have to assume that because, well, the previous model, the Xbox One, was a lower quality than the PlayStation 4. So, just based on that statement, how do you guys feel about that? Because they've released a few more statements, which I'm going to read after this. But that initial statement from last week kind of sparked this whole debate.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of seems a little bit like if I can't have my cake, nobody can have it. Like, if not everyone's going to be able to do it, then nobody gets the good stuff. We're going to put everybody on the same level. Personally, I kind of feel like it's not their responsibility to manage what the game can do. It's the console developer's responsibility. Like, if the console developers produce a console that can't quite live up to it, then it's...
Well, what bothers me about this is that I don't want... The way that this comes off is that they are capping it. And I don't want a developer to say Microsoft is throwing money at them, saying like, hey, cap my competitor's product at 900p to make it the same as mine.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't want a developer to be producing an inferior product when they can provide something at a higher quality, because we're in the next gen consoles now, arguably, you just say it, the current gen. Yeah. And 1080p 60 frames a second is kind of the benchmark of what you should expect out of these games. A lot of people are expecting that. Not all games live up to that. After this statement came out from Vincent, Ubisoft came back and they said, this is a quote from Ubisoft, "We understand how senior producer Vincent's quotes have been misinterpreted. To set the record straight, we did not lower the specs for Assassin's Creed Unity to account for any one system over the other. Assassin's Creed Unity has been engineered from the ground up for next-gen consoles. Over the past 4 years, we've created Assassin's Creed Unity to attain tremendous levels of quality we have now achieved on Xbox One, PlayStation 4s, and PC. It's a process of building up towards our goals, not scaling down, and we're proud to say that we've reached our goals on all SKUs. At no point did we decide to reduce the ambitions of any SKU. All have benefited from the decisions of our available optimization resources to help reach the level of quality we have today for core Assassin's Creed Unity experience."
So I guess I'll be in the minority here in saying that I really don't think this is a big deal. I think we're blowing it way out of proportion, because when I go to a video game website now and there's a game that is on PC, Xbox One, and PS4, every article and every comment is talking about the difference between the graphics quality. And I swear, if we put the pictures next to each other, no one could tell the difference between 1080p and 900p. But since we know there is one, we're just going to complain about it and harp on it until it's over. We're going to beat the
issue
horse
with me.
to
Is
death.
like,
There's no issue here.
If it was announced that they're both 900p, I'd be fine with it. Doesn't bother me at all. My issue is with, if they can provide you with a 1080p option, you better damn well fucking provide me that 1080p option. Don't lower it because you're trying to make it comparable. If you can provide it, you should. You should not release an inferior product just because maybe somebody threw money at you or because you want to avoid debate.
I think we're
because
assuming
congratulations,
money thing.
You've created a new debate this route. So yeah, there is assumptions, and that's why I'm saying like where they're at now, they've come back out and they've said like, look, it has to be at 900p and at 30 frames a second because they've got all of these AIs and for all these NPCs to interact with each other the way that we want the game to be experienced, it has to be at that spec. But my argument is the worst case scenario is this actually happening? Is if they are capping a product, that kind of bothers me.
Yeah, I mean, because you can argue that the PS4, I mean, I think it's fairly straightforward that the PS4 is a more powerful machine than the Xbox One.
Arguably so.
Arguably so, yeah. And so, I mean, if it's the
It's
case,
at least easier to develop for.
Okay. And so maybe it's a thing where, I mean, I'm a developer, and so I kind of know how, like, behind the scenes, sometimes you can just get into stuff and go, okay, you know, realistically, it's just not going to make sense for it to work this way. I could see a point where maybe their developers were in there and they were like, you know what, this is just going to work better across the board on 900p. And then their, what's his face? Vincent, he's out there and says something, and the developer's like, that's not what we wanted, and now there's a big thing about it. That being said, I think I'm also on board with Dirk here because, yeah, I mean, I sold TVs for a number of years. It's 720p to 1080p. Someone like us three sitting here can spot the difference on a TV that's bigger than 42-inch.
Sure.
Your average person's not going to see the difference between those two, let alone 900p and 1080p. And I do think that, you know, ultimately, like, if a game looks better and it has, like, you know, better lighting and specular effects and that sort of thing, that matters a ton. But the resolution just, I don't think it's a big deal.
I agree with that, and I like the sentiment to that.
Good. Podcast over.
And to go, well, and to go past that, I mean, you look at a game like Rise on the Xbox One. That is arguably one of the best looking games on Xbox One and PlayStation 4, and that is 900p.
Yeah.
I mean, that proves that a 900p game can be gorgeous, can be a visceral experience. Again, my whole argument is just, if you happen to be a company that is capping a specific SKU, for debate purposes, that is wrong, and absolutely do not do that.
If what they did lines up exactly with what Vincent said, that was stupid.
Yeah,
I don't know that I believe that it really did. I think it was probably more likely developers, and he just came out and said something.
Yeah.
So.
I bet developers are getting tired of their games coming out, though, and the first article on the first day is a picture of all three consoles next to each other. And instead of them talking about their game, they're talking about the difference in graphics on all three consoles. Because that has happened since these consoles came out. All of a sudden now these new consoles come out, and everyone cares about what resolution it is.
Yeah.
On the Xbox, like PS3, Xbox 360, no one cared.
Yeah.
No one cared
that's
at
because
all.
That's
and all of a sudden now it's all we care about as gamers.
Well, because
it drives me crazy.
Especially at the start of any console life. You saw it with the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 when they were announced. You saw it with every console.
It's over a year now, though, and we're still getting these pictures.
Well, I mean, that's a selling point. And especially when you look at multiple consoles or multiple games where they're releasing cross-platform, and they're inferior on an Xbox One compared to a PlayStation 4.
If you're deciding between Xbox One and PS4 based on graphics alone, then I think you're buying it for the wrong reasons.
Well, that brings
I think we're more worried about the graphics of the gameplay than the games themselves, because people are releasing turds right now, and we're more worried about what has better graphics.
Well, for sure. Well, that brings me to the next question: is do graphics matter? And I'm on the fence of yes and no. It depends on the gaming experience that you're going to have.
Yeah.
Because indie games, they're not graphically, high end at all.
Right.
And the gameplay here, graphics down here, it's not that important.
Yeah.
But then you look at, I have a certain level of expectation with a Metal Gear Solid game, where I kind of expect graphics and gameplay both up here, because the new Metal Gear Solid game is insane.
Right.
So that brings me to the question of, where do you guys stand on, do graphics matter? How do you weigh that into your expectations of a game and your purchase of a game?
I think that my blanket statement is going to be that graphics don't matter, but there's obviously some caveats. I think that there are franchises that are known for pushing graphical limits, like Metal Gear Solid and stuff like that. That's kind of their whole point. Not the whole point of the franchise, but that's something that they've been known for doing.
It's a selling point.
Right, and it's something that they need to continue as a tradition. There's other games that I don't think it matters for at all. In some games, the lack of pretty graphics is actually also their selling point. That being said, okay, so let's fast forward like 5 years, and people are going to look back, and they're not going to be thinking, well, I'm going to buy this game used at GameStop on this console because it had better graphics. They're not even going to remember. They're not going to care. What they're going to remember is, this was a cool game, or I heard this was a cool game.
For sure.
And so I think, kind of
that's the thing is, like, a game that has really pretty graphics but awful gameplay is not going to sell.
Yeah.
But a game that has great gameplay and great graphics is going to sell exponentially
Yeah,
more.
I think it
Right.
definitely adds to the experience, but I don't think
It's not a necessary quality
Yeah.
of the experience.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't think that. I think at this point, a company would have to really shoot themselves in the foot to release a game where the graphics were like so bad that people made that a point to like talk about how bad that was. The only game I can think of, and maybe you guys have one, the only game I can think of recently where I looked at it and actually laughed because it looked so bad was the first renders for the new Firefly MMO. Like, it looked like a 2004 game. And I was like, really? This doesn't look good at all. And so, but, I mean, it was like comically bad, you know?
Well, I think an argument that should be had that people forget to with next-gen consoles, because it's really easy to look at, okay, the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 is out, so we expect 1080p 60 frames a second on these games because it's next-gen consoles. That's kind of a level of expectation that you have in terms of numbers. But what I think people forget is that you've got a higher processing power in these machines, and what does that add to the game? Minus just the quality of the graphics, it's adding more NPCs on the screen, it's adding better AI, it's adding all of these other elements that make you a little bit more immersed in the game and increases your quality of gameplay rather than the quality of
interactive environment, stuff like that. Yeah.
Also, the point that on the last console generation, we didn't reach the full capability of the PS3 or the Xbox 360 till probably halfway through the lifespan.
We're not even
we're not even close, and we're worried about 900p right now.
Man, okay, so you know that Batman Joker Returns on NES?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to know what that game is going to be for PS3.
Oh, yeah. Well,
like what that game is where you're going to play it and be like, this looks like a freaking PS4 game.
Arguably, it's The Last of Us.
Fair point. No, you're right. I think that's probably
so. Which that brings me into my next question: is what is a game that stands out in your mind as like the visuals to it were mind blowing? Like what really blew your mind with a visual quality experience that also had really good gameplay, but then also on the flip side was a game that is not visually stunning, but you absolutely do love. And I'll kind of start with the high-end graphics, which is The Last of Us. The Last of Us on PlayStation 4, The Last of Us on PS3 was gorgeous as is, but when they upscaled it to the remastered edition for the PlayStation 4, holy crap.
Yeah.
That is an incredibly gorgeous game. And it definitely added to the experience, because I felt like, well, it wasn't even just the graphics to it, but it was just the acting to it, just the whole experience was perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no other word to describe The Last of Us Remastered other than it's a perfect experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, honestly, and I haven't even played this game, but Final Fantasy 15, the trailer they released, when they're driving in the car and you see the thing in the distance.
Yeah, that looks really good.
I played that clip over and over because I was like, oh my god, that looks amazing.
But that's gonna be a situation where I'm very curious what the gameplay is gonna be on that. So, because it looks gorgeous. I don't think there's much other than maybe the new Metal Gear Solid that can compare in terms of quality of graphics.
Right.
But
Final Fantasy is kind of known for
they push it.
Yeah, for pushing it. But I mean, who knows? That might have been a cutscene. But if it's a thing where it's like you're getting yourself closer and closer to that thing, and eventually you're like friggin' climbing up its legs to get to whatever. Man, that's gonna be so cool.
The scope to that is incredible.
This is hard. I mean, because I think graphics to the point nowadays where the only time I notice the graphics in a game is when they're bad. When they're so bad that I'm like, wow, what's up with the graphics in this? I've never looked at a game and been like, oh my god, these graphics are better than anything I've ever seen before. I think the only game I've ever noticed where I was like, holy crap, these graphics was maybe Heavy Rain. I mean, you feel like the point of that game was you're basically playing a movie. So I am looking at people's faces and stuff like that the entire time.
I'll counter your argument on that, because I don't, at least for me, I don't believe that's true. At the start of every game, I'm always taking in how this looks. At the start, especially of a next-gen console, I'm immediately taking in like, this looks gorgeous. When I started Killzone,
I'm immediately like, how fun is this game to play?
But 20 minutes in, you don't even notice the quality of the graphics anymore. You're just in the experience. You're just playing it. Yeah. I definitely think the startup, you've got to be taking that in.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and I think, I mean, just touching on this earlier, one of the things that I think sold The Last of Us was that the graphics were so good because it immersed you, because you could see Joel and Ellie. You know, like it didn't feel like they were fake. Yeah. It felt like they were real the whole time.
Especially in a storytelling experience.
Yeah, and I played it on PS3, so I didn't even have the remastered edition. But to talk about a game
flip it.
Yeah, the game that had not great graphics but was super fun for me was honestly Splosion Man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think this question really lends itself to indie games.
Yeah.
Or like Xbox Live Arcade games. Just these quick experiences.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, so Splosion Man, I'll say Final Fantasy X. Because when it was new, it was incredible. But when I played it for the first time through, it was several, it was 6, 7, or almost 10 years old.
And then now you get the HD remaster,
right? Which I'm working
really
through.
Awesome.
But I played it on a PS2, on a 37-inch screen, so it was blocky, and I didn't even have the component cables when I played it through, so it was like bad graphics. But I loved that game.
Yeah.
So that and Explosion Man, that's just.
I think that
charming.
says something because I'm in the same boat where I do enjoy the retro games,
Mm-hmm.
and so I do consider myself at times. Yes, I'm a bit of a graphics whore. Like I want the high quality graphics,
Yeah.
you know.
Well,
But sure. I do have the mindset and the ability to go back and play retro games and deal with. Like my favorite console, and I love the visual look of it, is any PlayStation 1 game because it's that in between where you're not a sprite based game, because sprite based games will last forever and they will always look gorgeous because it's how they're built.
Right.
PlayStation 1 was the time when you're starting to move into polygons and you're like,
It looks so
this
bad.
is looking really bad, but
Yeah.
I like that quality of look. There's something about it, it's the nostalgia. So
See, for me, this word is bad graphics but great gameplay. All that comes to mind for me is PC games. Because World of Warcraft, I never thought, oh my god, this game looks absolutely amazing. But I put days into that game.
Yep.
Diablo doesn't look absolutely amazing. The game's a blast. Hearthstone doesn't even have. Arguably doesn't even have graphics.
let's just say
I
Blizzard
love
games.
that. Yeah. Well, then Minecraft, League of Legends. I've never played those games like, oh my god, this is the best game I've ever played. I'll put days into those games.
Because I don't want it to be like, okay, PC games, they're arguably better looking than console
Not the ones
games.
I hunt down,
But
apparently.
here's the deal with
You're
what you're
bad
saying
at
is
PC
games.
those games that you've listed, they're meant to be extremely accessible PC games. They're meant to be able to run on a bunch of different consoles and across.
Well, I just can't remember the last time I bought a console game on a current gen console and put it in and be like, oh my god, these graphics are awful, but this game is great. I have like 5 or 6 Xbox One games. I've never rated them most graphics the best, like the best graphics or the worst graphics. I just play them like, this gameplay is pretty good. I'll play this game. That's about it.
You have an ideal mindset.
guess so.
I envy it sometimes. Well,
It's
there you guys
too bad.
have it. Let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
Do you think, is Ubisoft actually capping the PlayStation 4 edition down to 900p? Or is that just the way that it's built? Does it even matter? And let us know what is your best looking games, as well as the worst looking games, but the best gameplay possible out there. And thanks for watching.
Should we put this video out in 900p and see if anybody notices?